Constitutional Enforcement Pre-Study Material, Part 7. American Civilian Enforcement Organizations ACEOs. County sheriffs, elected peacekeeping officials. Sheriff's deputies, county peacekeeping officers. County militias, county peacekeeping officers. State militias, not to be confused with state militias, state peacekeeping forces. State militia special forces, for example, actual Texas Rangers, state peacekeeping officers. The Continental Marshals, international peacekeeping officers, land and 10th Amendment jurisdiction. United States Marshals, international law enforcement officers, Delegated Sea jurisdiction. State-of-state militias and National Guard units, national law enforcement officers working for us, but under the command of corporate officers of the Foreign Subcontractors, law enforcement officers, LEOs. State troopers, law enforcement officers. Municipal police, law enforcement officers. Commonwealth police, law enforcement officer. Incorporated County of Sheriffs, law enforcement officers. Incorporated County Deputies, law enforcement officers. You will notice that the highest official on the list is the elected county sheriff, and he is a peacekeeping official so long as he is, 1. Declared as an American state citizen, and 2. Working for an unincorporated county. You will also notice that all officers above the line are peacekeeping officers, and all those below the line are law enforcement officers. And you will also notice the pecking order. These are ranks of authority. Public peacekeeping officers always outrank private law enforcement officers. Always. Many LEOs need to be reminded of that fact and of the only thin claim they have to separate authority, the Pinkerton laws. The genesis of private law enforcement in this country began after the Civil War. The Western railroads were carrying people and goods from coast to coast. They were also carrying the mail and payrolls for both the military and private corporations, like the railroad corporations themselves. The trains were being attacked and robbed by outlaws like Jesse James, and so were the banks. To combat this, the Pinkerton laws were passed by the then Territorial Congress, allowing the railroads, banks, and postal servicers to hire and/or run their own private security services. The British company hired by the Continental Railroad for this purpose was the Pinkerton Agency, and so, these became known as the Pinkerton Laws, and the name Pinkerton has been applied to private corporate security agents and agencies ever since. The FBI is exactly such a Pinkerton agency. So is TSA. So is the local incorporated county sheriff. And so are the floor walkers at Walmart. They are all corporate employees operating in a private capacity, for profit, for hire, under contract. Technically, the only place these security agents have any claim to authority is on the railroads, the railroad right-of-ways, the federal post offices, and federal post roads. The basis for even that authority comes from the actions of a Scottish commercial corporation board of directors operating a foreign entity under conditions of constructive fraud, and on top of that, that same corporation went bankrupt in 1907, so even within the confines of private law it is my considered opinion that none of the Pinkerton laws hold any weight at all. Certainly, if any such agency or employee thereof ventures into a law enforcement capacity and violates the constitutional guarantees owed to the American states and people, they are on very thin ice, indeed. Like many other aspects of the entangled mess our government has become, the foreign territorial and municipal subcontractors have endeavored to expand the reach and authority of the Pinkerton agencies under their control, which they have employed to provide private law enforcement services. They have done this by tinkering with definitions of such things as railroad right-of-way and post road, so as to expand their excuse for the use of private corporate security agents and agencies. My point to all of you is that 1. These people are not operating as state citizens, so they have no power of citizen's arrest. 2. They are employed as private security officers by corporations, which is the definition of corporate mercenaries. 3. There isn't any credible basis for their private law enforcement capability, and 4. As already explained, they are being lied to by what they consider to be official sources. So that they aren't acting responsibly. I do not wish to cast any aspersions on individual federal agents, many of whom have served America with honor, but if you are being lied to about the basis of your own authority and fed horse hooey, like the idea that I run a rum distillery in Barbados, these guys aren't playing with a full deck. They are being deliberately misinformed and misdirected, and that makes them dangerous, to themselves and to others. How would you like to be one of the FBI agents who set up the ambush and murder of Lavoy Finicum about now? But to be fair, they were acting on false premises, had probably been misinformed by their sources, and everyone concerned, including the incorporated county sheriff's officers, were assuming the existence of authority for themselves that in fact doesn't exist. When you straighten out your falsified identity records and political status records, and join your state assembly, you have actual power. You not only have the general power of citizens' arrest, you have the specific power of the state backing you. The Leos who have been swaggering around brandishing billy clubs and tasers need to get the word. They've been assuming that they have legitimate power and that they are big cheese because they work for the man, but in fact, their butts are hanging four square into the wind, and if they don't serve the American states and people, and don't honor our constitutions, they've got no business being here, and the actual law enforcement power of the states and people can and will fall on them like a ton of bricks. The only reason that it hasn't done so already, is that we were deliberately misled and misinformed, too. All peacekeeping officials and officers outrank all Leos by many country miles. All these men and women working as peacekeepers are soil and/or land jurisdiction elected officials or officers, some are volunteers, some are paid, and hopefully more will be paid in the future. Actual sheriffs are elected by the state citizens, actual deputies are deputized by the sheriff, the state assemblies operate and man the actual state militias. And no Leo anywhere has any right or reason to mistake us for combatants in a commercial mercenary war that never involved us and which ended 150 years ago. Our Continental Marshals all operate in international jurisdiction under the auspices of the United States of America. All the state militias and actual county sheriffs all operate in national jurisdiction under the auspices of their actual state. If anyone says one word against our militiamen and women, mark them well as either another ignoramus who needs to be educated about his own country, or one of those who have betrayed this country and its people for the sake of political power and money. If anyone teaches you to use oxymorons like sovereign citizen and tries to blackball patriots, shove it back down their throats, because those same people clearly think that you are a fool and that you can be persuaded to undermine and mistrust and ridicule and even open fire on other Americans who are doing their actual duty to defend this country. It's time we put the butcher's bill on the Queen's account. And it's time we called the Pope out for the Roman Pontificate's part in all of this. And time we all wised up. Leos included. FBI included. CIA included. DIA included. We've all been played for chumps and fleeced blind. It's not nice to fool Mother Nature, and it's not safe or smart, either, to defraud your actual employers. As our people correct their political status records and join their state assemblies, they naturally fill up their county assemblies, too. As they hold their elections, all our vacated offices are filled and the civilian government owed to this country is reborn anew. As our American civilian courts begin to function again throughout the land, in state after state, the military tribunals will be forced to shut down, and the graft and racketeering, the abuses of power, the extortion, and the asset stripping will be at an end. As our courts reopen, the power of the bar associations will be broken and the coercive powers of the court rules will lose their grip. As we press forward to end the dead baby scam and teach people to record the births of their children instead of registering them, these European con artists won't be able to place false and repugnant claims of ownership against our people and their assets. As we restore our actual government, the entire world will change for the better, for it will no longer be under the pall of faceless, nameless, unaccountable, unelected corporations and thugs. End Part 7.